I'm going to tell the story on the bonus show today of one of the people that came up to me, no tears in his eyes, but he did come up to me during my recent trip to Spain and actually talked to me about Vivek Ramaswamy. And one of the things that this guy said to me was, he sounds like he's making so much sense. And then you kind of like put down on paper and read back some of the things that he says. And you realize this is some pretty whacked out stuff. And I'm going to play an example of that for you. This clip going very, very viral over the weekend. Vivek Ramaswamy, who of course is running to be the 2024 Republican presidential nominee, was interviewed on CNN by Jim Acosta. And the topic of Ukraine and Russia came up. And in this segment, Vivek says to Jim Acosta, he would let Putin keep parts of Ukraine, and he would block Ukraine from ever joining NATO, and he would then go and visit Vladimir Putin on top of it, the cherry on top. This is some pretty wild stuff. And not only is it very concerning foreign policy, it also is very counter to what Republicans want us to believe they are about ideologically. So let's listen to what Vivek said, and then we will discuss.
And you've also suggested that Vladimir Putin be allowed to keep parts of Ukraine as part of a way to solve that conflict. What if he wants parts of Poland?
You leave
next?
out the most important part of that deal.
More of Ukraine next.
Aren't
you letting some of these
the most important
authoritarian
part of the
leaders
deal
off
is
the
what
hook?
actually advances? Far from it. I think that the Biden administration is so stubbornly attached to the idea of getting Xi Jinping to drop Vladimir Putin. What I think we need to be doing is get Vladimir Putin to drop Xi Jinping. Just like Nixon went to China in 1972, I think Putin is like the new Mao. I will visit Moscow and I will pull Russia out of its military alliance with China.
Wow.
The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest military threat that we face today. Hypersonic missile capabilities, nuclear capabilities in Russia, far ahead of us or China. A naval capacity in China ahead of ours, combined with an economy that we depend on for our modern way of life. Those two nations are in a military alliance with one another, and nobody in either political party is talking about it. Worst of all, our engagement in Ukraine is further driving Russia into China's arms. So my foreign policy centers on weakening that alliance. That advances American interests.
But you would let Putin have
that
parts
is how
of Ukraine.
we actually secure peace.
But you would let Putin have parts of Ukraine.
Freeze the current lines. I would freeze the current lines of control, and that would leave parts of the Donbass region with Russia. I would also further make a commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. But there are even greater wins that I will get for the United States in return. The top of the list. No, our goal should not be for Putin to lose. Our goal should be for America to win. That's what we have forgotten in this country, is that driving Russia into the ground is not a U.S. strategic goal.
So there is so much wrong with this perspective that it's actually hard to really go through the pieces of it. There are certain catchphrases that have caught on among the right, and maybe some people use them in good faith, but they are the catchphrases that are completely breaking the brains of right-wingers. And our goal should not be for Russia to lose, but for the U.S. to win is one of those phrases. Should we have the unique, random, just pick it out of a hat goal of Russia losing? No, I agree with that. The problem is that it is a vague talking point wrapped up with impossible promises that gets us trash as far as foreign policy is concerned. First and foremost, it's nonsense to think that President Vivek Ramaswamy is going to go and meet with Putin in Russia and then sever the growing alliance of Russia and China. Would it be in American interests to pump the brakes on Russia and China increasingly aligning? Sure, from an American centrist perspective, economic nationalism, and all of those perspectives, is the U.S. in terms of our individual goals better off? Aside from whether this is, you could say, well, David, we should be thinking globally rather than nationalistically. Fine. I'm just saying, is it true that in the way that people like Vivek Ramaswamy think about geopolitics, is it true that interrupting Russia-China alliance would be, quote, better for the United States? Yeah, probably. But it's ridiculous to think that Vivek is going to go over there and achieve that. That's number one. Number two, it's not just a question of, well, our goal shouldn't be for Russia to lose, but for us to win. There is an objective aggressor, an arguably war criminal aggressor here in what is taking place in Ukraine. And that is Putin and Putin's decision to go in. And so when you say, well, yeah, you took this land illegally, but we'll let you keep some of this. And also we'll do your bidding by jumping on and saying NATO must say Ukraine will never be a member, which happens to be exactly what Putin wants. Just sort of like cool off the relationship with China. This is not about just in the abstract Russia winning or losing or the US winning. You are sending the message, much like what we worry about in terms of the messages that are sent to North Korea when Kim Jong-un or others in the Kim family previously take these belligerent actions of saying, hey, if you act crazy, we will ultimately just work to appease you, and acting crazy will get you goodies. And it used to be that that wasn't okay. And of course, this runs completely counter to the narrative that these right-wingers want us to believe they subscribe to when it comes to foreign policy of big, strong men and alpha, and we're strong and nobody's going to bully us or whatever the case may be. This is really weak stuff, but also importantly, it's completely imaginary that any of this would even work. So some people wrote to me and said that is Vivek kind of like the Andrew Yang of this election cycle, that he's getting media attention disproportionate to his actual support. I don't think so, because Vivek Ramaswamy actually has quite a bit of support relative to what Andrew Yang had, if I recall correctly. So I do think it's a different situation, but it is really strange that obviously bad ideas are being, have gained cheerleaders in the way that they have. We'll talk about it more.